There is no rest for the weary on the PGA Tour. Another star-studded signature event at the RBC Heritage. We have a lot to get to on the roundtable. Outright picks, we have best bets. How about betting on these stars? DraftKings has some markets, and the number one key stack to victory. Let's start with this. Who do you trust the most at Harbour Town? Because since 2015, there's been over 1,200 balls in the water, 12th most on tour, but only 4 winners hit the ball in the water during that stretch. That comes out to 0.01% of balls in the water came from winners that week, Will. So our question really is, who do we trust not to hit the ball in the water this week?
It's an easy game, right, Chris? You just keep it out of the water around Harbortown for 72 holes, and you're just fine. I will say one of those 4, of course, came last year. Scotty Scheffler, final round, put it in the water on 15. But then again, Scotty Scheffler was basically walking on water at this point in the season last year, going straight from that green jacket to winning at Harbortown. We're not going to have that double dip this week. Rory McIlroy not in the field, but plenty of big names to tee it up, and look forward to breaking down the odds here.
We're going to kind of do a little hybrid show this week, key stats and making our picks all in one. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube for all the big key stats that we have compiled in the PGA Tour database. This week's odds kind of are changing a little bit, if we're going to be honest. Xander Schauffele's getting down there. I know maybe Rory not playing probably helps that. Colin Morikawa, Ludwig Åberg, both coming off the Masters, getting lower and lower. And look at the right side of that board. Our boy, Patty Ice, he's been so good here.
He has. I mean, he is the horse for course here with a bunch of top 3 finishes over the last 6 or 7 years. Scotty Scheffler, though, at these odds, he's on an island unto himself, essentially. You know, coming back as the defending champion off a 4th place finish at the Masters, he still seems a little bit out of sorts, but clearly dictates being a betting favorite, and a very clear one at that, because of just how good he is with the iron play. We saw it last week at Augusta National. We saw it last year at Harbour Town. These are 2 very, polar opposite courses in terms of what you need. You go from the huge hilly terrain of Augusta to the cozy confines and one of the flattest courses on the PGA Tour down on Hilton Head. But Scotty's got all the shots, and so not surprising to see him there, as a man unto himself. But you're right. Then you get into the next group, these 4 or 5 guys. They're all bunched pretty closely. Cantlay's a little shorter because he's had so much success at Harbour Town, but the other guys are kind of right there, and it's beauty in the eye of the beholder this week, Chris, depending on how you like these guys and how they fit the course.
So let's figure out why Cantlay and some others have been so good here this week. The stats that we've been crunching, the PGA Tour data is all about hitting the green in different varieties this week because of the size. We'll get to that in a minute. But this is the lowest percentage of greens hit in regulation from winners on the PGA Tour in the ShotLink era since 2003. Even more so than any U.S. Open they've played. The Genesis Riviera, we all know how tough those greens are to hit. FedEx St. Jude's at Southwind is tough. Are you surprised that these are the hardest greens to hit on tour?
They're the hardest greens to hit because they're the second smallest greens to hit. You got to aim small, miss small, as they say in the Patriot. I mean, only Pebble Beach has smaller targets on the PGA Tour year in and year out. You see a lot of 20-foot putts off the fringe for birdie, some for par, but a lot for birdie. This is a course where famously, you can have very few actual putts or putts per GIR, just because, as you said, they're hard to find, and they are really demanding from the ball striking and the approach play, as we see there from the approach play of these last 8 champions. You cannot spray the ball with your irons and expect to contend at Harbour Town. You don't need the distance off the tee. This is a place where you have a lot of tee shots under 300 yards. A lot of times guys are laying back with 3-wood or 3-iron or somewhere in between, but it is a second shot golf course, classic Pete Dye design in that regard. But it's the combination of accurate approach play and then being able to work on and around these greens. Scrambling is going to be big, because as you see, Chris, everyone's going to be missing greens. So it's just a matter of what you do while you're scrambling and trying to keep pace with the rest of the field when you do miss.
I think it furthers that point when you look at the proximity to the hole of the winners in this same stretch versus the average of the field. The difference in proximity to the hole really wasn't that much. I believe it was about 4 or 5 feet closer. It was about 36 feet for the average and 31, 32 feet for the winner. So they're not having that big of an advantage in the proximity. It goes to your point of scrambling. The fact that these guys are hitting more greens, maybe not closer to the green to the hole because the proximity is not that much greater. They're hitting more greens. So when you're hitting more greens, you're having to scramble less because it's so hard to scramble around here.
For sure. And listen, we sit here and we're leaning on stroke gain approach, and my mind goes back to those betting favorites we saw, and of course the light is going off for Colin Morikawa, who outside of Scotty Scheffler is the best iron player on the planet right now. It did me no good backing him and his great iron play last week at Augusta National. I'm not emotionally prepared to go back to the well and do it again this week. But if you're coming into this, from a parachuting in from 30,000 feet, there's a lot to like about Colin Morikawa on this golf course and his skill set, how it matches up to this venue. So maybe you're going to be more bold than I am this week, but that's really the style of play that you need, right? You don't need to be a bomber, and maybe you have someone that you don't trust as much around the greens, but if they're able to hit more, then they're going to have fewer of those opportunities to have to get up and down. And the key is with these small greens, and as we said, it's relatively flat. A lot of guys are going to be pouring in birdies. If you hit the green, you're almost guaranteed to have a very realistic chance to make a birdie. And so it's from there how you convert those chances and stay away from bogey elsewhere.
And just to wrap this up here with these stats, you can tell that it is a second shot golf course by what the winners have done gaining strokes on the approach. Each of the last 8 winners here all were inside the top 10 of strokes gained approach that week. And go figure, 8 of the last 10 were inside the top 10. Jordan Spieth, go figure, was barely on that precipice. All the scrambling, he did so well a couple of years ago, so there you go, another point to hit on there. You mentioned Morikawa and, all the metrics that he hits well on there. DraftKings has a handful of markets on Morikawa, Scheffler, Oberg, Schauffele. How you want to bet on these favorites this week? We can just start off the top. I don't see any reason why you should be betting a place market on Scotty Scheffler this week. Just the fact that all these are minus money and it gets worse and worse. I mean, I'm not even convinced he's in the top 10 this week. And even if he is, I'm not worried. I'm not saying convinced. Don't make that face. I'm just saying I wouldn't put down minus 225 for a top 10 on Scheffler, would you?
No, I think you're better off shopping with the other 3 players here you have listed, especially in those top 5 and top 10 markets. Keep in mind the structure of this week's event, 72 guys in the field at Harbour Town, no cut. So you do have a player like Scheffler and even Morikawa, Oberg, and Xander here. They have 4 rounds to get it together. You're not going to shoot yourself out of it with an opening round that might be, a little bit slower coming off the Masters. They're going to have a chance to really show why they're the best players and the best iron players in the world. If you like Scheffler, I would go more for, a single bullet and go with the outright, right? If he's around plus 360, you want a Scheffler ticket, you're probably going to have something to root for come Sunday. These are otherwise steep prices to go on the place market. But I do think, especially if you look at Ludwig and Colin Morikawa, I think if you bet them both for top 5, you're going to make money. One of them is going to be in the top 5. I have a tough time figuring out which one, but the composite of both players and the iron play and the well-roundedness that each one brings, I really think that one of them is going to shine. Xander still flying a little bit under the radar for me, played solid in parts at the Masters, really looking to him more for 3 or 4 weeks down the stretch. He's going to be defending his title at the PGA Championship at Quail Hollow next month, but I'll take the iron specialists there in the middle and hope that one of them pops, especially those top 5 markets.
I agree. I feel like Schauffele is probably a few more weeks away from being at the odds that he should be if you feel comfortable to bet him right now. If you got him even with Ludwig Oberg, I don't know if I would go anywhere near Schauffele right now. It might be a different story, like you mentioned a few weeks later now, PGA Championship. I do like Morikawa and Oberg as well. I was going to say both of them for the top 10. Now, the number's not as juicy, but I do like that it's still plus money for both of them. And keep in mind, it is a limited field event. You mentioned they've got 4 rounds to do this thing. And the fact that Oberg, I think, is really close to being near the top of his game. Obviously, what happened the last couple of holes at the Masters says it's a learning experience still like it was last year, but this guy has all the shots, and I think a top 10 for him at plus 130 of anything on this board, I think is the one that I like the best, is top 10 Ludwig for plus 130.
We're entering the stretch of the season, and certainly based on what we saw last week at the Masters, where Ludwig is going to be one of the top 3 or 4 favorites on pretty much any venue. There's not really a venue that we're looking at, whether it's a big brawny one like last week or a really cozy confine like this week, where you say, this doesn't really set up well for Ludwig Åberg. He's got all the shots. He's got the well-rounded game. So I certainly expect him to contend not only this week, but listen, he's already got a signature event under his belt at the Genesis this year in terms of the outright market. Would not surprise me at all to see him pick off another one later this year.
All right, let's get into some of our picks, our best bets this week. We're going to start with Will on am I going to call this a flyer on Matt Fitzpatrick? It's top 20, though.
It is top 20. We're playing the numbers there in terms of just get me into the top quartile here of the 72-man field. It's amazing the free fall that Matt Fitzpatrick has undergone. He entered this week last year. He was 12th ranked in the world. He was 10th heading into last year's Masters, and he's currently 75th in the official world golf ranking. Just has absolutely fallen off a cliff. So in that regard, it is very much a flyer, but no one loves this course more than the former champion. He still has that Harbour Town head cover on his bag. Vacationed here as a kid. Just absolutely loves this course, and it really shined through with his win a couple years ago. So I'm thinking if there's anything that's really going to get him going, and going to get him back into the shape that we saw in 22 and 23 when he was contending at big events, winning the U.S. Open, it's going to be a return to Hilton Head, to Harbour Town. And again, I'm not saying he's going to win. I'm not saying he's going to be in the top 5 or top 10, but I think this is a really good price for a guy who's going to be motivated to continue to chip away all 4 rounds. If he gets off to a slow start, he's not going to mail it in. I think Matt Fitz at plus 220 for a top 20 is a way to go this week.
This guy's won way too many times. He's won big events enough that he's proven he's not a flash in the pan. He's not one of these guys who just showed up for a couple of years and then falls off into the abyss. He works way too hard for that too. He's way too smart for that as well. And you're right, maybe this is the kind of place where he can find some old mojo and get back to the winning ways he's used to. I really like JT Poston for a top 20. Now, we haven't seen him necessarily contend at the top all year this year, but what I do love is that he has not missed a cut since the Sony Open about 12, 13 weeks ago. That's great. It means he's playing solid enough. And it's that quartile. Get inside that top quartile of there. I love it for almost double your price at plus 190. And you like him too.
Yeah, I'm going a little bit bolder. I think he could win in that plus 7,000 range. It is a really good mid-tier player for DFS or just a sleeper overall in the outright market. He has played really well here. 4 finishes of T8 or better since 2019. Has a penchant for going low. Opened with a 63 here last year. Has a couple of 64, 65 in that range. So this is a place that really seems to suit his game. The laid-back atmosphere definitely suits the JT Poston vibe. And you're right, he's been playing some quietly very solid golf, including making the cut last week at the Masters. So there's a lot to like for me. I know that we've got, again, this is that dynamic where you've got Scheffler with his thumb on the scale a little bit in terms of the odds. And so you get down the board and there's a little bit of a higher price than maybe you'd expect. I feel like JT Poston is someone who could easily be in that plus 4,000 or 5,000 range. Instead, you find him up around plus 7,000. You see here for plus 190 for a top 20. And there's a lot to like. I'm in with you.
And I think him doing well enough last week at a course where maybe we didn't expect him to do as well at is another positive for him. We expected a lot of good things from Shane Lowry last week at the Masters, and he did it for three rounds, Will. He was right there in the mix. That Sunday 81 really demoralized him. Here's my theme this week, and you tell me if you agree with this in general, no matter what the week is. I'm not going to hold a guy's feet against the fire for a couple of bad moments at a huge event. I'm not going to blame Shane Lowry for a bad 81 Sunday at the Masters. I loved how he played for 3 days. He's done really well here. I believe 4 top 10s here in 7 starts. Maybe it's 3. I'd have to go back and look. A lot of top 10s here regardless. He likes his place. His stats pop here. I really don't care if he played poorly on Sunday. What do you think about that?
I think that there's still a little bit of the emotional handicap, especially coming off the Masters. I mean, he was right there. He was so frustrated Saturday night, finishing bogey to really, let a realistic chance to win the green jacket slip away. And then, as you said, he had the really rough Sunday. He stayed around to celebrate with Rory, one of his best friends. So there is still a little bit of emotion where he was very high, very low, got very high again. So that part is harder for me to figure. It's maybe one that would make me lean more towards the live or the in-play markets of say, hey, I want to see 9 holes of Shane Lowry on Thursday to kind of get a feel for, where his game's at, where his head's at, and then maybe reassess. But you're right, on paper, there's a lot to like about, how he fits at this particular golf course. Having played well here before, I was high on him last week at the Masters. I really thought in that, plus 3,500, plus 4,000 range that he was live to get a breakthrough second major title. Came close in terms of contending deep into the weekend, but as we said, kind of fell apart on Sunday. So listen, a runner-up earlier this year at Pebble Beach behind Rory McIlroy, so he knows how to play a course with small greens. I don't think that's going to be a problem. And this is another player who doesn't necessarily drive it. He's not a bomber off the tee, but he's very accurate with his irons, and that's going to be the biggest strength of him and for other players this week.
So if it's about emotions for Lowry, I think your good news is on your top 5 pick here, there's no emotions on this guy.
No emotion. We are flatlining with Patty Ice. I'm not sure that he cracked a smile or shed a tear last week at the Masters. It was not exactly his week, but so often we have come to this event on the heels of the Masters, and Patrick Cantlay comes to life. I mean, this is a crazy run for him of basically 5 out of the last 6 years. He's been in the top 5, runner-up, T3, all that stuff. So this is a place that just really suits him. He has done everything but win at this tournament. We saw that with another guy, Luke Donald, a few years back, where he was just runner-up basically every year, but couldn't get into that tartan jacket. Patrick Cantlay seems to be fitting that mold as well. So it's been, I don't know if we would say disappointing season, Chris, for Cantlay, but certainly not up to his expectation in terms of getting into those top 5, top 10 dynamics. But this is a place where I think at plus 400 especially, he's just really keyed in on this course. And this is a place where I do expect him to get back into the mix and really contend deep into Sunday. He still hasn't won since that BMW a couple years ago. So like many big names in the Scotty Scheffler, Rory McIlroy era right now, if you're not Scotty, you're not Rory, there's not a lot of trophies to go around. And that's been part of the problem for guys like Justin Thomas and Patrick Cantlay, Colin Morikawa. But this is a place where I do think Patrick Cantlay should once again contend. We're seeing him rolling all these putts, and he does it for a reason.
It feels like Cantlay's playing probably a little bit better than a lot of people are giving him credit for, just because he's not winning. And he's not getting in those final groups on Sunday, so you assume he's down, but maybe he's closer to winning than we think. That's an excellent point. Speaking of winning, Daniel Berger is your winner. What's the thought process here? I like the number.
Yeah, I like the number and I like the player. He is trending in the right direction, similar to your Poston handicap of a guy that is just making a lot of cuts, quietly is right where he wants to be. Came out of nowhere with that runner-up at the WM Phoenix Open and has not finished worse than T30 since then, including a T21 last week at the Masters. And I'm looking at course comps. I'm looking at this is a player who has won at Pebble Beach. He has won at Colonial. Those are two of the tight, really demanding ball striking courses that we have on the PGA Tour. And now you head to a place where he's had some success before in terms of contending. He hasn't won here yet, but Daniel Berger was winning in bunches early in his career. He racked up a few wins, then had those injury issues where he missed the better part of a year. And so it's been a bit of a slow, steady climb back inside the top 50 in the world ranking once again. He's playing in the biggest events. He's playing in the majors. And I really think that this is a really good price for someone that he possesses a lot of the shots that you need to win on this course, and has really, like I said, the correlated history of winning at similar courses is what puts it over the edge for me.
And I think people believe he's going to win again too. And I think he probably thinks he's going to win again too, which is half the battle. So you know how you talked about emotions on my Shane Lowry top 10? Sepp Straka is similar in the fact that he did not like what happened at the Masters. I'm not going to hold him against what happened at the Masters. He doesn't have the emotional letdown problem because he didn't play the weekend. I think he's rested, and I'm not going to let my thoughts at Augusta, what he did there. Played pretty well on Friday, by the way. Was going to make the cut, but had a disaster on the 18th hole and missed the cut. I think he's playing plenty well enough to get a lot of attention here. Multiple top 5s here recently. That's great. He loves the course. And I'm going strictly stats this week with him. He's 13th in fairways. You got to hit the fairway, right? He's 3rd in strokes gained approach. He is 2nd in proximity. I like that Straka is going to be rested, and I think he has the game and the tools, and he's been so solid. Maybe since he won back at the end of January, he hasn't been up to the standard we thought he would be and what his numbers are, but he's not the kind of guy who's going to contend every single week. He's the kind of guy who's going to sit there, and then all of a sudden he's been playing good enough. He pops one week, and he ends up a winner.
Fascinating bounce-back opportunity this week for both Sepp Straka and Russell Henley, who were two of the trendier picks last week at the Masters, and both of them just really struggled mightily on Thursday in particular. Russell Henley, I think, went 79-68 last week and still missed the cut. So Straka was also in that zone of a bad round on Thursday, dug himself too big of a hole to make the cut on Friday. And so you're right. Now he's got, a couple extra days that he wasn't planning on probably to try and refocus on this week. And it's a signature event. There's $20 million up for grabs. There's a lot of points, and these guys are going to be dialed in by the time you get to Thursday. I've been on Straka multiple times throughout this year because, as you said, those stat lines continue to pop, and including and beyond his win in La Quinta early in the year. So there's a lot to like there. But for me, similar to the Lowry pick, it's where's your head at? Where's the emotion? This is an opportunity to have a buy low moment on both Straka and Russell Henley, of guys that, like, listen, if you liked them last week at Augusta National, you probably like them for a lot of the same reasons this week at the RBC Heritage. It just depends on if they're going to get a little bit of a better start on Thursday than they did a week ago.
We're rested. Do you feel rested? You were there for 5 days, 6 days. We're good to go. Going to pick some winners this week?
The show rolls on, Chris. Content never sleeps. Let's get it.